Hello friends, and welcome back to another week of my chaos. Have you ever started a project and over the course of the progression, it completely spirals out of control to the point where it is no longer what you started out with? Yeah, well, that was my week. Originally, I started this week out with the thought that I was going to specifically be making this pattern.
Last week I showed you guys my Joann's haul, and
I am anxious to jump in.
Desperately wanted to make a horse invention before.
This purple and green
busy print.
cotton.
I absolutely love it. Some of it's upside down. So we've got the bat, we've got Madame Leota, Kitty Patootie,
Simplicity is 9742
Because I have not made this pattern yet, I do want to do a mock-up. I have both and both.
of cottons that I inherited, and I have zero intention of actually using
Just because I want to ensure that this fits.
because this was such, in my world, expensive fabric.
I don't want to screw it up.
But it very quickly digressed into a hot mess of mock-up making. I became so determined to not mess this project up by ruining my Haunted Mansion fabric that I made not one, not two, but 3 different mock-ups to decide which one is better for my body type. So let's rewind the tapes and watch this train wreck happen in real time. Simplicity 9742 is really easy to assemble as there's only a total of 8 pattern pieces. For the 4 bodice pieces, it really is as simple as lining up the notches and sewing the seams along the bust line and side line. Now that we have this entire thing pinned together, let's take it to the sewing machine. Okay, it is really hard to tell how this is going to fit at this point, but I know that the button placard is like 2 inches, so I know that those are not going to touch. But I also may want to bring this down. My natural waist is a little lower. I'm kind of long-waisted, so I don't know. I'm going to attach the skirt and sleeves and try it on again before I make any decisions on what changes I want to make to the pattern. Oh, that's not useful. Hold on a minute. Okay. I'm going to take that in about 1/2 inch on each side in that armpit region. Another thing that I would like is the straps need to be shortened, again, by almost 2 inches. I'm also decidedly not in love with a box pleat. I don't love this. I also feel like I do in fact want to make this a longer waistline. I'm gonna try this again. I'm gonna add about 1.5 inches to the bodice. I'm going to take about 1.5 inches off of the straps, and we'll see how that looks. So this pattern does not have a built-in lengthen and shorten line, so I've got everybody perfectly lined up with their notches and making sure that they're with the grain. Oh, you need to go a little higher. You need to come a little lower. And I'm going to pick a section in here and just draw a straight line straight across all of them, making sure that they line up, and split it, and then add my 1.5 inches at that split. the hardest part of this is cutting along that line that I just drew. Then I take a spare piece of tissue paper and lay it underneath the pieces that I cut, lining them up, making sure my grid line still lines up, and tape everything back together with that 1.5 inch gap in between my original top and my original bottom. Okay, it is tomorrow. I made the executive decision after sleeping on it overnight that I am going to make this mock-up wearable. I feel like it is going to give me a better representation of how this dress will look on my body type, because I'm having a little bit of an insecurity moment about the cut, for one. And for two, I feel like for the eco-friendliness of this entire project, that way I'm not putting like gobs and gobs of extra fabric into a landfill by throwing it out. By completing it and making it a wearable mock-up, I can, because it's not my color. I don't wear like Christmas red, 4th of July red. I can donate it. You know, I'll write the measurements on a cute little tag or whatever, and then donate it to a women's shelter. And that way, it's not just taking up landfill space. But primarily, it'll give me a much better idea of how the piece actually fits me. All right, I am gonna go cut everything else out. So I'm definitely pulling here in the cleavage. So I'd have to add a little bit of room here at the widest point of my bust, and I can probably take it out of the seams here. But for the most part, I actually don't know that I love the cut of this. I actually feel like a stuffed sausage in this. Like, you can actually see the inverted nipple happening here. I'm glad that I did this as a wearable mock-up so that I could actually see how this fits assembled. I'm gonna try a different pattern though. This is why we do mock-ups before we cut into our good fabric. So my final thoughts for mock-up number 1. This pattern still needs a few more adjustments. If I were to use Simplicity 9742, I would have to let it out in the bubby cup region so that it fits better. I also really do not love the box pleats. I feel like it just adds too much bulk, and personally, I don't feel like it flatters my figure at all. I might consider going back into this pattern with a nice full circle skirt, something that doesn't add bulk to my waist and hips. And still not 100% satisfied with this pattern, I tried a second one. So let's move on to hot mess number 2. All right, I dug through some of my patterns and I have this guy, which I'm gonna give that a try. I'm gonna continue using this red gingham because I still have like 10 yards of it. And this requires 3 yards, so it'll be another dent into my fabric stash of fabric I'd never used otherwise. And it'll also give me the opportunity to see if I like this pattern. I will check back in with you guys once I have a mock-up for this one. And just like on the bodice of the Simplicity pattern, the bodice for the Butterick pattern also only has the bust line princess seams and the side seams to complete this. So it's super user friendly. The things that I like about this pattern, one, there's only 4 pieces, pattern pieces. This front placket is attached, so it's just a matter of, and 2, the D-cup adjustment is this piece, so it actually gives me the bubby cleavage room that I require. I did have to put some pins here, and I did put some pins here. Those are normal for my body because the distance between my apex and my shoulder is petite, is short, or shorter than average. I'm not high busted, but I just don't have a lot of space between here. So this, taking an inch off of these, is pretty standard for me. And what happens, I can show you if I drop these down again. All right, so if I take those down and drop this, it puts the apex of the cup down here, and that's not appropriate. And that's just my body type. And so when working with commercial patterns, this is something that you should always take in mind. Commercial patterns are not a one size fits all, or everybody who's a size 18 is a size 18. It's not like that. Your body is different from my body, is different from my mom's body. And so that's why making mock-ups and doing custom fitting is so important. I will say this, after years and years and years of doing this, I know automatically to lift. Instead of fighting here, lift here. If that makes sense. But anyways, I'm gonna finish working on this, transfer anything to my patterns, and I'll see you at the next stage before I decide which pattern I'm going to proceed with. Okay, so to make the alterations to my pattern, I'm going to take the measurements of where I pinned here and transfer them to here. I'm using a hem gauge. A ruler would work too. So on the arm side, it's 1.25 inches down. And then on the neck side, we're 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters down. But I still need my 5/8 seam allowance. Okay, so this is my new stitch line. And now I need a new cut line. Putting this at 5/8 of an inch. And that's my new cut line. We're gonna do the same thing with the under the armpit measurement. Where I have pinned is 1.25 inches. So at the top of this side seam, I'm going to be taking it in 1.25 inches. By about 1.5 inches down from the notch, I'm at 1 inch. And so that gives me an idea of what my taper should look like. Okay, now that I have taken that seam in, the apex of this princess seam actually lines up with the apex of my boob. I'm gonna finish this up. Again, make it a wearable mock-up so that way something can actually be done with it and it's not just wasted, thrown out, taking up space in a landfill. All right, wearable mock-up number 2 is done. Because of the fact this dress comes with cup adjustment pieces, starts off as a better cut for my body type. I'm also a little less insecure about having it end right here like the other dress. But I'm thinking of trying a third one. I still have like 7 yards left of this gingham, so I think I'm gonna try a third one. What? Don't judge me. My final thoughts on mock-up number 2. I jumped in with Butterick 6674. Of all of the 3 that I made, this one is by far the most comfortable to wear, but it's also the most frumpy. It was super easy to make with minimal adjustments required because the pattern already comes with cup adjusted pieces. The way that that works is that you sub out the bodice side front piece for the piece that you need for your cup size. So for me, for a D cup, I used piece 4 instead of piece 2. And while this one was like a half circle skirt, so it didn't add that bulk to my waistline, I still felt that the skirt just didn't have enough swoosh for my personal liking, and I would definitely go back in and make this one a full circle skirt if I used this one. I also felt that it was the most meh. I would probably do something like a nice cummerbund belt or a petticoat underneath it to give it poof, if that makes sense. Something that would make it just a little bit more fun, I guess. So, and still not being 100% satisfied with this Butterick pattern, I tried yet another pattern. McCall's 7952. Let's watch. So I think I'm going to try a third dress. I still have about 6 yards left. Actually, I think I might even have closer to 8 yards left still of this red gingham. And I'm going to give, just turned on my computer. And I'm going to give this pattern a try. McCall 7952. Hi, go to sleep. Oh, look, the pattern I was just researching. I'm gonna give this pattern a try. I kind of like this view. The skirt is a little fuller. If I were to use this pattern to make the final dress, I think it would be cute if I used a contrast, like a black velvet in lieu of the black velvet buttons. I think that would look really cute. But we're just on a roll on making these mock-ups because I really don't want to screw up my good fabric. And if I've learned anything from this entire process, it's that I don't look good in red. Red gingham. 1. 2, I really hate poly blends, because that's what this is. But ultimately, as home sewists, we really cannot trust a pattern out of the gate. Always, always, always do fittings as you go. There are so many people out there who sit there and complain about patterns not fitting properly because our bodies aren't identical, and every single body needs slightly different adjustments. It's only way you are going to save yourself the stress and anxiety of not ruining your good fabric. In my head, my biggest fear, and I think a lot of my analysis paralysis of starting projects is, am I going to waste the money and time I spent on this fabric and then have a dress or have an item at the end of it that I hate because either the cut is wrong or the drape is wrong or something? Doing these mock-ups is a great way to prevent that in the end. All right, let's try one more say that this ends up being more of an umpire waistline on me. Here is that seam. But so far I like everything else. The thing that's tough about this particular dress is in order to get to the point where I could do a good fitting on the bodice, I'd have it like 90% assembled. So if fit adjustments need to be made, it needs to be disassembled in order to make those fit adjustments. So that's something to keep in mind moving forward. But for the most part, it seems okay. I still have to attach the skirt to see how it'll look. The other thing that I do find that is irritating is that right here is pretty gapy. Like if I had made this piece tighter in the initial seam, like that very first seam where you sew the left and the right facings together, that would have to have come in to make this pitched a little bit more, and that would tighten right there. But like that's literally the first step is here, the second step is here. So that's how early I would have had to realize that. Hold on, let me show you on the instructions. So this is what I'm talking about. This seam I would have had to have made it tighter up here in order to take away that gape. Okay, so I don't have this stitched shut yet. I like the shape of it overall, but I'm genuinely unsure of how I need to make adjustments in order for it to work, other than continuing to plow through and finish it. But I'm not in love with this cut enough to warrant cutting into my fabric. Final thoughts on this one. It was not easy to work with in that it was really hard to make fit adjustments to it until you were much closer to the end. And that's not the way that I prefer to work, making it much harder to get that made for me look to it. As it is, without any adjustments to it, it's much too large in the décolletage area and way too tight in the waist. Adjustments would be needed, and if I were to use this as my Haunted Mansion dress, I would very much so have to make those changes. And similarly to mock-up number 1, I would not be doing a box pleat. Like, period, the end. I would also make it a super full swooshy circle skirt. So overall, my final takeaway on this project is make a mock-up. Make a mock-up. Make a mock-up. In case you didn't hear me, I said it 3 times. Because I did it 3 times. I would have been devastated if I had just dove right into the original pattern and gotten the results that I did from Simplicity 9742 straight out of the envelope. I also would have decided that I would have been devastated. I would have cried, and my dress would have gone into the donate bin. I would have been out all that time and money for something that I would never wear. Overall, I'm glad that I did this. I have also decided that if I never have to see red gingham poly cotton blend ever again, it will be too soon. Okay guys, tune in next time to find out which of these patterns I choose to make my Haunted Mansion dress. Let me know down below which one was your favorite. I love you all. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this week, and I will see you next time for some more fun fabric and shenanigans.